Good afternoon. It is Monday, September 18th, 2017, and we are here with On the Mark, a daily briefing of U.S. Supreme Court case Bailey and others versus the United States and others on the docket at 16-1464. We are privileged and honored today to have joining our attorney, Mark Small, one of the 12 brave petitioners on the case, Chistopher Gagliardi. Christopher has been an activist his entire life, but when he was born with infantile autism, the doctors told his mother that he had a zero chance of contributing to society. And as you'll see with the little roll of pictures I'm going to show right now, fortunately his mother refused to take that destiny, and instead she went out learning about and educating and becoming with her son a powerhouse team of advocates for everyone, especially those with special needs. So before we let Christopher take over, I would just like our attorney, Mark Small, to kind of explain why we're bringing a petitioner on this week. What's the connection with the case?
Well, there's always a connection between the party bringing the case and the case. This week, there have been developments, as Christopher has posted on his Facebook page, where the government is in a position to try and eliminate the Americans with Disabilities Act. The problems that we face right now because of the election illegally of Donald Trump, we face many problems, amongst them having someone who illegally obtained office through collusion with a foreign power. But when you look at some of the policies that are being vacated and reversed, Americans with Disabilities Act was a bipartisan act. That was brought into law by both Democrats and Republicans. The Clean Water, the Clean Air Acts, those are all laws that were brought in by people from both sides of the aisle. Christopher knows firsthand that the problems that people encounter and the hurdles that they have to clear don't recognize party lines. And so when people lost their right to vote in this last election, everybody lost their right to vote. The only people that really had their right to vote actualized were those people who meant to vote for somebody who was going to be a puppet of the Russians. So developments every week show us new reasons why we really have to have the Supreme Court hear our case. And that's what we really want people to do is be aware of this case. And if nothing else, the Supreme Court should hear the case.
So, Christopher, you have been one of our very most committed, active, and impactful petitioners. So you have the very big picture, but talk to us about what really is moving you this week and what's on your mind.
Thank you very much, Commander, for the opportunity for me to address the people. My fellow Americans, let me be clear about something right now. This is a state of emergency. The Americans with Disabilities Act was enabled because of its roots in Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. The idea of the legislating enhancing the civil rights to millions upon millions of Americans with special needs, as Mark said, gained bipartisan support in both 1988 and 1989. The rights came to be in 1990 and then enacted in 1991 by George H.W. Bush. For the past 2 decades, this piece of law protected the rights of all special needs citizens by allowing them to go to schools in public, being able to go on the buses and public transportations that are ADA accessible, being able to go to the movie theaters and libraries and stuff that are able to be accessible for people with special needs. In addition, getting jobs and not being denied the right to a job because of your disability was also under the protection of the law of the Americans with Disabilities Act. But now, with this man in office who is literally destroying the very progress we've made, is really making it far more horrific and nightmarish beyond the comprehension. I am reminded of the historical roots of this tragedy back in the 1930s, when a man in Europe took the power and destroyed human life by stripping them of their freedom to be able to vote, the freedom to be able to worship, and more. There were many who were attacked because of their disability or religion or their preference of gender. We are seeing that history repeat itself. We are reminded if we don't understand history, we will be repeating its tragedies. And I am sorry to say, we are not learning from history again. We are repeating the tragedies in the 21st century. This is why I stood up and signed on to Reboot 2017, because my life and the lives of every individual, regardless of who they are, is at stake. Now more than ever, I am asking the Supreme Court to take on this case and to nullify this man's presidency so we can finally get a president and a vice president and a Congress that will be able to stand up for us once and for all.
Thank you. And Mark, can you explain the significance of having someone like Christopher on the slate of petitioners and what the standing issue is in this case?
Well, all voters have rights, and that's the most important right in a democracy, is to be able to vote and to have your vote counted. And so we have petitioners who voted in swing states. We have petitioners who are voters who represent a wide range of Americans, and Christopher is one of them. He's faced a great many challenges in his life. And one thing that we have to realize is what it is that they want to do. Vladimir Putin wants to create chaos, and he wants to demean and degrade any democratic institutions that he can. He's a dictator. And so people like Christopher standing up and saying, no, this won't happen, not here, is important. And it's important for people to understand what we seek in this case. We seek to nullify the election. We also seek to have appointment of a special master to investigate independently what occurred. And so all of these things are important, just as every American is important and every American's vote is important.
So you mentioned chaos, and to the final thing I would like to ask the two of you, this is very powerful and I just want to get it out far and wide. It's important, the unity and the diversity and everything, but talking about a new election, people are worried about the chaos that might ensue. So can you talk about this fear of chaos and people saying that we will be in a constitutional crisis, Mark? What does that mean to you?
We are in a constitutional crisis. We're in a situation in which individuals have attacked the United States, individuals have manipulated institutions in the United States to put someone in office illegally, with 3 million fewer votes in the popular election than the opponent that this individual faced. A constitutional crisis exists when either the Constitution doesn't make a specific provision for something, or an individual ignores the Constitution provisions that exist. I think that we have an individual who doesn't recognize the integrity of the courts or anyone who disagrees with him, and who is controlled by someone from overseas, another country. So those are elements of a constitutional crisis. But what would be worse? People think Putin wants chaos. What is not chaos is if the Supreme Court appoints a special master under our laws, has an investigation conducted, and if is warranted, removal from office of the president, the vice president, and anyone else who took office with the assistance of a foreign power adverse to the United States, and that being Russia. So that's the opposite of chaos. What we're propelled towards, because Putin wants it, is chaos.
Thank you. And so I would just like everyone to know our case is, Mark, explain what that means. Our case is scheduled for conference a week from today on September 25th. And before I close with some action items, can you tell people what needs to happen, what could happen between now and next Monday, and what we're hoping happens on Monday?
Okay. Next Monday, the Supreme Court will hold conference on a lot of cases to determine what they should do with them. As matters stand right now, the court has issued cases that will hear for argument this coming fall term. Ours was not listed amongst those cases. It was not considered at this point to be a case that merits the Supreme Court attention. What we need to have happen is people to make sure that the Supreme Court knows of our case. What the court will do is have one or two clerks screen cases for them, summarize things, and the justices don't necessarily see the case. This is too important for this to be simply screened by clerks doing their job and thinking they're doing the right thing. This has to be reviewed by the court. And if we get our best day, if we get the relief that we want, the court will order a briefing schedule, we'll hear argument, and then we'll determine whether to appoint a special master. That's the intermediate remedy that we seek. Long term, we want to nullify the election, but if Robert Mueller, whose job is within the executive branch, is fired because he's doing too good of a job, we'll have lost months and months towards trying to get the eviction from the Oval Office of the individual who now occupies it. So people need to go to revote2017.net and look at what they can do.
Thank you. And I would like to segue to just say that we need, among other things, we need attention in the media, we need public awareness, and we could use donation. The legal expenses of our case are I think Mark's been very generous with us, but we really need to have proper resources for this case. And we are also asking people to send postcards to each individual justice, and you send it to that justice so-and-so at the Supreme Court of the United States, 1st Street Northeast, Washington, D.C., 20543, and it can be as simple as hear the case. And the case number is 16-1464. To learn more, not only can you go to our website at Revote 2017. Whoops, hold on a second. Sorry about that. Here it is, Revote2017.net. Mark Small has an awesome Twitter feed that he's doing, and his Twitter handle is @MarkSmall1973. And he also does a daily blog, and it's on civildiscoursenow.com. And finally, again, we would very much like to just ask everyone who could to contribute. And Christopher, I'll give you the final words before we wrap.
America, I can't ask enough. Please stand with us. Our very future, our very country, our very lives, and everything we fought so hard for is at stake. The Supreme Court must hear this case. The Supreme Court must rule in our favor. The Supreme Court must save our country and the democracy that I have fought so hard for all my life, so that we can have a better and more united government that will be for, of, and by the people. It is our time now to stand up and be heard. Edmund Burke said, all that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Now is the time for us not to do anything, but to do something. Let us resist and persist till we win.
Thank you very much.